What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Hello, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, March 31st, 2020, last day of the month here. Tomorrow's April Fool's Day, so we all have to be on guard for joke stories and hoaxes that seem to curse us about this time of the year. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. And today, I want to do something a little bit different because I don't know about you. I'm sick and tired of hearing about coronavirus and just nonstop and all the corporate media channels. That's all they talk about anymore. So the coronavirus news has now been moved to the bottom of the talking points because I want to get to some other news here. And first of all, I want to talk about Joe Biden, who every time he gets on TV, you can almost see the man deteriorating, you know, day to day with the goofs that he says. He forgot he was vice president at one point. And Donald Trump made this comment the other day about how he'd much rather run against Cuomo, Governor Cuomo. And Cuomo made a statement today saying, no, he's not interested in being the president or being drafted by the DNC during the national convention. So I guess he's out of play, or at least that's what he's saying. But I got to tell you, if the Democrats go with Biden, Trump's got a second term. Biden is just falling apart right in front of everybody's eyes here. All righty, so getting right on into it, Tulsi Gabbard is out of the race, of course. She's also not rerunning for her seat in Congress, so it looks like she's going to go back to just being an ordinary Hawaiian major. And it really is a shame because she was a true peace candidate. But the Democratic National Committee basically just excluded her right from the beginning. And a lot of people think that it may have to do with the fact that in the 2016 election, when Gabbard was vice chair of the DNC, she endorsed Bernie Sanders. And Hillary Clinton, like an elephant, never forgets. And she knows how to carry a grudge forever and a day. But a lot of people were very disappointed when Tulsi Gabbard endorsed Joe Biden rather than Bernie Sanders. And it may be that Tulsi Gabbard is still holding out the possibility that she could be the vice president, which I think would be a plus for Joe Biden, this campaign. I know that the campaign said they wanted to find a black woman, and Tulsi's sort of brown. So we'll see what happens with that here. All right, while all this coronavirus stuff is going on, we're still executing a foreign policy that seems to be a little bit radical out there. Attorney General Barr has announced indictment of Venezuelan leader Maduro on narco-terrorism charges. I'm not even really sure what that means, but these were the same charges that were filed against Manuel Noriega in Panama prior to the invasion of Panama. So are they signaling an invasion? Maybe, but they put a $15 million reward for Maduro's arrest. And apparently one of his higher-up officials has already surrendered to the... All righty. Elon Musk has come on out and in front of an assemblage of U.S. Air Force officers declared the era of the fighter jet is over. Because the fighter jet is dead. The manned piloted fighter jet is dead, and the future is going to be robotic drones. And basically said that the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter would have no chance against a drone fighter. Well, let's be honest. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter would have no chance against the Wright Flyer. It's that terrible. So the fighter jet era has passed. Elon Musk has said drone warfare is where the future will be. It's not that I want the future to be that. It's just that's what it's going to be. All righty. Now, when we get into the realm of weapons that don't really work, and this is an embarrassed one, apparently the toilets on America's two newest aircraft carriers clog frequently, causing problems throughout the ship. Yeah, I could see where that would be a problem. Now, the ships use a scaled-up version of airliner toilets, and you know how wonderful they are, using vacuum power to evacuate the human waste to wherever they evacuate it to. And apparently the system must regularly be cleaned with an expensive acid solution that costs $400,000 per use. This on a $13 billion aircraft carrier. Amazing. Just You know, set up an outhouse on the poop deck, which, by the way, is why they call it the poop deck. They don't show it in illustrations of old sailing ships, but on the very rear of the ship, there were two little outhouses. And that's where you would go. And just everything would drop into the ocean, and that's why it's called the poop deck. Bet you didn't know that one. Amazing the things you learn listening to RBN. All right, getting into the economic news now. 47,000 stores have shuttered across the United States. Almost all retailers have stopped paying their rent. And, you know, even before the coronavirus pandemic, U.S. brick and mortar retail was facing an apocalypse of epic proportions. Dozens of retailers filing for bankruptcy. And of course, they're blaming Amazon, they're blaming online sales. No, the reality is people don't have money. And I'll give you an example. The retail experience, as I have known it growing up, is I go into a store, I take some money, I look at the products, I pick them up, I touch them. I sort of get a sense of how well they're made. I give the clerk my money, the clerk gives me the product, we both go home happy. There's a lot of instant gratification in the retail experience. When you order online, you have to sit and you have to wait, you have to wait, you have to wait. And it isn't until you've already spent the money and you've already got the product that you can evaluate it. Usually it works out. You know, eBay's been very good to us for the most part since we moved here to Indiana. But I really like going into the store and just, you know, grabbing things. So I think blaming Amazon, blaming online sales, I think it's misplaced. I think the reality is people just don't have money. As of tomorrow, the Cheesecake Factory is telling their landlords they will not be paying the rents on their storefronts. They just don't have the money. So I don't know if they're getting a bailout from the $2.2 trillion emergency relief. And they're already planning another one of those. They're already planning to have another one of those coronavirus relief bills. And already Nancy Pelosi is out there saying, oh, but it's got to have windmill credits and it's got to have this and it's got to have that and all that liberal wish list here. All right, gold has gained 8% and silver 18% as the Fed balance sheet tops $5 trillion. Now, when they say $5 trillion, they're talking about basically that's the outstanding debt from the Federal Reserve here. Gold and silver coin and bar shortages continue globally due to massive demand and a breakdown in supply. We were hearing about that yesterday. We had some callers calling on in saying basically the dealers don't want to sell at the low prices because then they're losing money. So when you come on in and say, I want to, you know, the prices are great, I want to buy low and sell high, and say, well, no, that's what we do. We buy low and sell high. And when the prices are low, we're not going to bother selling. We're just going to sit on the inventory. Okay, this is iconic, if you will. Apparently, Standard & Poor's has downgraded Ford to junk. Talk about your fallen angels here. And given where Ford CDs were trading, more in line with B1, BB minus rated American Axle, it should hardly come as a surprise that S&P has finally bitten the bullet and downgraded Ford's debt to junk status. Amazing. Now, apparently, the FDIC has released a video asking Americans to keep your money in the banks. Don't worry, it's safe. Keep your money in the banks. When I heard that, I said, boy, we got to clean out our accounts if they're that worried about it. Anyway, Apple stock has taken a tumble after a report says the 5G iPhone could be delayed to 2021. This is coming from Nikkei Asian Review, saying Apple could delay the launch of its 5G iPhone over supply chain disruptions in China and new fears of demand issues as the global economy crashes. Sources told Nikkei that Apple has held internal discussions on the possibility of delaying the launch by months. Supply constraint aside, Apple is concerned that the current situation would significantly lower consumer appetite to upgrade their phones, which could lead to a tame reception of the first 5G iPhone. They need that first 5G iPhone to be a hit. Well, you know, when money is tight, when you don't have money, even with those checks that are coming from the government. If your current smartphone is working, why would you upgrade it? I mean, really, do you have to have the latest and greatest? I remember a time in my life when that was my attitude. Oh, there's a new one out. I'm going to trade in and get it. Not anymore. Not anymore. I use everything I have until it is no longer repairable. U.S. gasoline demand plummets despite low oil prices. We're probably because people are staying in their homes with all these lockdowns here. Apparently, in some parts of Ohio, actually a lot of parts in the country, gasoline is now below $1 a gallon. Over in Cleveland, Ohio, it's 67 cents a gallon. When was the last time you saw gas prices that low? Too bad we don't actually have any place to go to. It'd be a wonderful time to be driving cross country. All righty. A while back, we talked about how the L.A. Sheriff Alex Villanueva wanted to shut down all the gun stores in Los Angeles because they're non-essential businesses. Well, this triggered a huge backlash, and so he backtracked on that. And adding to the complication there, Donald Trump, in defending the Second Amendment during COVID, declares gun sellers are critical infrastructure. And so now, as a national policy, gun stores will be left open. And I understand they're doing a very, very brisk business. But the liberal gun grabbers have not quit. And they're pushing a bill called House Resolution 5717. And every anti-American gun bill imaginable is in H.R. 5717. It's going to require a federal license to transport gun and ammo. You are not allowed to buy ammunition for another person like your wife or brother. The poor won't be able to afford the license. Background check reform, outlaw private sales. You can't give your guns away without paying a transfer fee and doing a bunch of paperwork. 7-day waiting period for everything. Minimum age for purchasing firearms and ammunition, 21 years old. And you have to securely store your gun and document it. One size fits all. They want to extend the gun-free school zones, all schools and everywhere that students go, which has proved to be a rousing success. Red flag gun laws, a silencer ban, an assault weapon ban, bump stock ban, outlawing the 80% guns. Every gun must have a serial number. Now, a little qualifier. If you build an 80% gun, you can file paperwork and get a serial number assigned to you, which you can then engrave into the gun. So you can keep your 80% gun. You just have to get that serial number for it. Okay, on the dealers, it's going to require dealers to use locked metal cabinets and safes and anti-theft alarms, security gates, and more, which I imagine probably most gun stores are already doing. They're going to have a 30% tax on guns on top of the sales tax, a 50% tax on ammunition, gun safety initiatives, meaning anti-gun groups, and you're only allowed to purchase one gun per month. So there's a lot in there. Alrighty. All right, we've been talking about the coronavirus and how these anti-malaria drugs seem to be effective against it. Hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine itself, mefloquine and so forth. Over in Nevada, their Democratic governor has issued an emergency order barring the use of these anti-malaria drugs because these anti-malaria drugs are very inexpensive. And Big Pharma is racing to produce a treatment and a vaccine that will be very costly and highly profitable. And they don't want these other products out there. And so we're seeing these drug combinations, including the one recommended by President Trump himself, are being banned by certain states because they want to make sure that you're going to be lined up to throw a lot of money at the pharmaceutical industries. And I imagine those states that have a huge pharmaceutical industry presence are going to be right there at the top of that list of banners. So, apparently a Wegmans customer faces charges of terroristic threats and harassment after coughing on a worker at the grocery store chain's Mahalapan location and claiming he had the coronavirus. This is from Governor Phil Murphy. You know, people at this point, I'm hearing all these stories about folks who cough on people or make jokes about coronavirus or scare people saying, I've got the virus, touch, 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 touch. Come on. We need to basically reach for the better human being in us all to get through this crisis. This is not a game. It's not fun. It's not funny. You know, this is a time when you need to be cordial and polite and sensitive to the other person's feelings, because a lot of people are totally freaked out about this. And you're just going to make their condition worse. And if that gives you a sense of empowerment to take people who are already scared and make them even more scared, well, you're the one with the problem. So, Trump has asked South Korea for medical equipment in return for business deals. Apparently, MSNBC issued a tweet claiming 50% of the population could die from coronavirus. They got called on it. As a result, they've issued a correction. All right, looking at the international news here. Apparently, the Iranian Army's air defense warns off an intruding F-18 fighter jet in the South Country. And here's what's interesting. The jet had no markings on it at all. They don't officially know where it came from. Well, just see, unmarked fighter jets. When was the last time we heard a story about unmarked fighter jets? Oh, yeah, the USS Liberty was attacked with unmarked Mirage 3s. Gee, now, jog my memory. Who was it who attacked the USS Liberty? I'll figure it out at some point, I'm sure, here. But apparently, a recently released video shows how the Iranian Army's Air Defense Force warned off an intruding F-18 fighter jet several times in southern Iran, forcing it to leave the country's airspace immediately. Obviously, somebody was probing their air defenses and discovered that they're actually a lot better than they initially thought. Let's see. The video was taken on March 20th. And shows Iranian Army's Air Defense Force warning the intruding fighter jet, whose nationality has not been revealed, well, that alone tells you who it is, to get away from the country's border after it approached Iranian airspace. All right, over in eastern Syria, the ISIS threat revives. Idlib militants are killing each other over security zone deal contradictions. So the blood is still flowing into the Syrian desert. And the concern, of course, is ISIS cells are once again active in eastern Syria. The ISIS presence in the desert area of eastern Syria had been decreasing over the past year. Now that has reversed. Okay, at Camp Taji in Iraq, multiple explosions were reported, at least 3 explosions. And a reporter with Sky News Arabic said on Tuesday night, the 3 explosions had been heard at Camp Taji, an Iraqi military installation that also houses a large number of U.S. troops. Okay. Story coming out of LouRockwell.com, Punishing America's Enemies. And what he's talking about is how in the middle of this coronavirus, that the U.S. is continuing to impose sanctions on countries which limit their ability to get needed medical supplies and equipment to deal with this thing. So it's as if wherever coronavirus came from, the U.S. is weaponizing it. Now, because it's biological, it may not be possible to determine how it developed. If the various governments that might be involved are uncooperative, you'll never find out. That's the advantage of biological warfare. You don't know who initiated it against you. It just shows up. So, anyway. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And a reminder that Republic Broadcasting is still in the middle of a fundraising drive, and they really do need your help. I wish it was not so, but they really do. And the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. And I thank you as well for all donations to whatreallyhappened.com. And before we get back to the news here, for those of you who read the whatreallyhappened.com website, we seem to have gotten most of our problems under control. It still occasionally will freeze up, but nowhere near like when we first made the move over to the virtual private server, and there's going to be some other things that we're going to do, but the service is more or less back to normal. So thank you for your patience in dealing with that. Okay, you've probably been hearing in the news lately about how we're setting new records for unemployment. And we had that caller in last week who basically said they got on hold to unemployment and we're told we're not taking any more calls today because we're that busy. There's been a 4,000% raise in California unemployment. Over 100,000 people have applied for employment since March 15th in Wisconsin. Now, the Federal Reserve is out there saying that by the time this is all over, we're going to have a 30% unemployment figure. Well, the reality is we've had 30% unemployment for quite some time now. They don't report it as such because people who have been out of work long enough to run out of benefits are put in a separate category, and they're not counted to come up with that single-digit unemployment number that they have. So they're using this coronavirus to basically bring the propaganda, if you will, back in line with reality, because too many people already knew that our unemployment was close to 30%. So now they're going to say, well, see, we agree with you, it's 30%. And all they'll argue about is when it got to 30%. But it is, people are losing their jobs. You know, we're hearing about people we know are losing their jobs, and it's getting ugly out there. Now, over at Boeing, remember Donald Trump said don't allow Boeing to go out of business. And they are going to be recipients from some of the money being handed out from this Coronavirus Relief Act, version 3. Boeing is demanding a $60 billion, with a B, dollar taxpayer bailout, but refuses to give the U.S. government an equity stake. In other words, they just want the money. If you were a normal investor and you came in with $60 billion, you would reasonably expect you would wind up owning part of the company in stock. And there's a lot of anger right now in response to Boeing's demand. And they spent over $40 billion on stock buybacks, making its shareholders and management richer while burying the company under a record $25 billion in debt. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey, I'm going to have to take you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind? Hello? Dustin, are you there? You're on the air.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Doing fine.
Yeah, Mike, I wanted to... Yeah, what do you think of the numbers going up all of a sudden, like in New York? And I mean, it's... you know, I look at Florida, Louisiana, and Arizona, and I think Missouri still don't get it. Missouri is like out to lunch. You know, like when are they, you know, Mike, they need to do a nationwide lockdown. And all the states then need to lock down from other states. And then those states, like New Jersey, Florida, every state should just lock down their state inside. That's what they got to do. They're not doing that. And I said this a couple of days ago. Everybody's on their own timeline. You can't do that. We all got to be on the same timeline. You know, you can't have another state not doing anything for a couple weeks. I mean, it's just stupid. You know, I don't understand why the president don't come out and just have a national lockdown. Why is he not doing this? You know, like this. The only way to stop this thing, to flatten the curve, is to do that and then slowly bring the economy back, giving people masks, that particular area, gloves, and then you expand that. But it's not being done. Nothing's being done. It's just, I don't know, what's your take on it? I just think nothing is actually being done because everybody has their own thing that they're doing. Like it's very disorganized. It's pretty bad.
Well,
I mean,
I think it comes down to whether you agree that the independent states are sovereign, or if you're a federalist. Because, the way this country was originally set up, the individual states had authority over their own territory. Some states have been hard hit by coronavirus, and they're starting to enforce border closures, Texas especially. Other states haven't really been bothered by it yet, so at this point, they're not doing anything. I think it has to do not with being on a single timeline, but basically evaluating the threat within your own borders. And some people are making some bad moves there, like the mayor of New Orleans. All right, stay on the line. Dustin.
Can you hold me over? Okay.
I'm holding you over. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And Dustin, again, I think what's driving border closures, I mean, everybody's trying to walk this thin line between protection from the coronavirus and wrecking the economy worse than it already is. And so the states that have not been hard hit by coronavirus, they want commerce to continue. They want the trucks to roll. They want the supply chains to be operating. And I think that's why they're not taking the actions you think they might.
The trucks are still rolling in, but they need to close, what they call mass gatherings, because that mass gatherings is where you would have the most spread, But it's funny, the same people that are saying we need to close the borders for illegal aliens, but they want to keep them open because of the economy. This is a virus, man. The virus don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or you're a Christian or a Catholic or a Buddhist or whatever. It's gonna get. It's already in Missouri, Mike. It's in Texas. It's in probably, I'd say, all the states already.
Yes,
okay?
It is.
So you look at that as a template. Well, if it's there, you got to keep that curve down, right? You don't want it to exponentially go up, right? So you keep it flat as long as you can, so the hospitals don't go overwhelmed. What's going to happen though if they have a mass amount of cases, say in Pennsylvania, Missouri, and Florida? They only have a certain amount of ventilators for the whole country, right? And other equipment. So I mean, that's just going to tax the country out. That's what I'm saying. That's why I think I hate to say it because I'm I'm for the Constitution, but I mean something like this, because there's still people thinking it's a hoax or it's the sniffles. It's not. I mean, to really clamp down, I still think they should close the whole country down and every state, because they're doing it in Florida and now in New Jersey, where I'm from. They're thinking about it. Anybody out of state with plates, they're going to be pulling over to see what they're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they? I know in I think it was in Florida, all the way stations, the trucks are driving straight through on the highway. They're pulling people over onto the way stations. If you're out of the state, they want to know what you're doing here, because that's how you keep the state from getting more people that are influxing in. But see, that's another problem, because then the states already have the virus in them. Like the hotels and and Florida, unfortunately, they really screwed up by keeping those spring breakers, man. And the Mardi Gras in Louisiana really was not a good move.
No.
I mean, I think they blew it with that. I mean, they had an opportunity, and they chose economics. But what's going to happen? I mean, we know the economy's a fraud already, Mike. I mean, it was propped up before even the coronavirus was even a term, right?
Now, we know the economy is already fragile here, but listen, let me play devil's advocate here, because if you'll remember when the coronavirus first showed up, we had people saying that human-to-human transmission was impossible, that it was no big deal, that it was a Chinese problem. They were downplaying it. Apparently, Fox News is concerned that because they trivialized COVID-19 when it first showed up, that they might actually be open to lawsuits. I don't think so, because of the precedent set by the Monsanto synthetic bovine growth hormone lawsuit. But everyone is understanding that corporate media initially was downplaying the problem. Now, of course, they've gone the other direction. They're hyping it up as hard as they can. but it's quite possible that a lot of these state governments were listening to the news and saying, it's no big deal, we can go ahead doing what we're doing. I mean, the mayor of New Orleans has justified his going ahead with Carnival and Mardi Gras by saying, we only had one patient, and nobody said it was going to be a big problem.
Not now, though.
No, not now.
It's
not now.
Not now. And you know, Mike, I mean, you and I suggest to all your listeners, like, one person in your household go to the store. There should not be more than one person in your household at one time going to the store. It should be just the one person, and that's it. Because you don't need two people going to the store. Because I wonder, Mike, how many of your listeners have, like, no mask and not wearing no gloves? You know, that's the scary thing. Because, you know, when you watch that video of people talking to each other and you see that infrared light with the water particles coming, I mean, that's discouraging. You know, that tells you something, like, you know.
Well, you know, some Walmarts are starting to enforce a one-person, one shopping cart rule. And if you're just going along with somebody just to keep them company, I can understand them doing that. But the way Claire and I shop is that she'll have the shopping cart, and I do what are called commando raids on stuff that's at the far-flung reaches of the store. I'll basically walk very fast over, grab something, come back, put it in the shopping cart that Claire has, go grab something else. And so we finish our shopping much more quickly, and we get out of the store that much more quickly.
Isn't that nuts, though? Like, if you think about it, I mean, we're in some serious crap here. We got to do that, and I do the maze thing where there's nobody down, and I'll fly through. I mean, that tells you, like, you know, if you feel that you have to do this, then maybe that's your instinct telling you this. We're in really some deep crap, in a way,
well,
you know. Like,
we shop normally, even before coronavirus. That's the way we've always shopped. You know, where, you know, should be looking. You know, stuff that I can just go and run and grab, I go and run and grab.
I ask you, like, when's the last time, like, when you go to the store, do you see, like, a lot, like, over here, I see not many people wearing masks or gloves. I see more than I usually do, but there's still the majority of people who probably can't get masks, but probably have the ability to wear gloves. They don't, you know?
No, we're seeing
I don't know what
gloves here. I'd say probably about maybe 25% of the store customers, and our local post office has now installed plastic at the little counter. There's a little hole that you put your letters and packages back and forth through. And one of the other stores that we do business with, all of their employees are now wearing masks and gloves.
That makes 75% of the people who don't have anything, right? Pretty much. Yeah, that's Mike. You stay safe, and all your listeners. You know, now's the time to be street smart. You know, you might think it's a hoax, but do you really want to take that chance? I don't think it's a hoax. You know, this is not a hoax, you know, but it's not the sniffles, like I said the other day. This is, you know, not all viruses are hoax, you know, if you look at throughout history. So, I mean, you got to use your street smarts and, you know, avoid large groups of people if they're got to go around, and stay safe. Thanks, Mike. Have a good night.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mr. Mike. You know, the thought crosses my mind that everybody that listens to, you know, independent media and even a lot of the independent media hosts, I feel like we're in two separate camps. Like Dustin was saying, some believe this is a hoax and others believe that's the end of the world. And the truth lies in the middle. But I have to ask a question.
Hello?
Remember whenever the media was running weapons of mass? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You faded out there for a second. Yeah, let's try that one again.
Okay. Okay, I was saying, remember back in 2001, whenever the media ran the story of weapons of mass destruction, you know, where was the truth in that? In the middle, like we said, the truth lies, but it wasn't truthful. It was a lie. I feel like we're being bamboozled. Yes, there's a virus going around. The numbers that they're quoting, how do we even know that the numbers that they're giving us are truthful? You know, the CDC, they're a for-profit, non-government organization, and they're all about their pockets. How do we trust something like that, an organization or company like that? I feel like we're being bamboozled once again. Once again, I feel like we're being bamboozled, and I feel like we're being held hostage by the pharmaceutical companies as well as the Democrat Party. And I know it's bigger than that with the worldwide economic reset. I mean, I just feel like we as average Americans and average everyday people, we're being screwed over once again with our rights, with this reset, pretty much with everything. So where in the middle does the truth lie with this?
We don't know. We have to find out. But again, you're absolutely right. There's the two camps. There's the camp that thinks this is all a hoax, that there isn't such a thing as a virus, any virus, that it's the flu, that it's the sniffles, and it's no big deal. And then you have the other side of the camp who's saying, this is a disaster in the making. And we're not going to really learn what the truth is until we have the hindsight of history.
And I agree with you. And as we're in the middle of history right now, and I kind of liken this to be like a puzzle, a 500-piece puzzle, and we're sorting through and trying to find the border. But I think we have more than 500 pieces. I think we have 1,000 pieces. Because look at all the data that all the data points that we know. New World Order, this and that, other things. We know China likes to mess around with biological weapons. So, I mean, this is a mess, and it's easy to get lost in this. And I hope people stays their course. Like Dustin says, be street smart. Let's try it together. We need to work this thing out and not be, and it's okay to disagree, but disagree civilly. Let's figure this out together and stop being divided amongst these two camps. And let's try to figure this thing out.
Okay, I agree with you. That's what we're trying to do. But I think at this point, when you see all these experts who came out with these doomsday predictions early on, they're all starting to backtrack. And so I think what we have here is a repeat of the 2009 when pigs fly flu debacle, where, Roche Pharmaceutical made a fortune with Tamiflu, but it turned out to be less serious than the seasonal flu. And I think right now everybody's figuring out, how can we back off of this? We made this such a big, ugly monster, and now it turns out the monster isn't really there. How do we back off and save face? And I'm sure that's a big problem for the corporate media right now.
Agreed. And the other thing that I want to say is anytime government takes away rights or liberties, the Patriot Act, 20 years later, we still have this, we're going to have to fight to get our freedoms back and our liberties back, and our First Amendment, Second Amendment. We're going to really have to fight, because government doesn't, once they seize power, don't like to give it back. And that's the big elephant in the room that I have a problem with. That's my big problem. And, I can't wrap my head around it because I don't have an answer. But that's all I have, Mr. Mike. I hope you have a wonderful.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Dennis in Florida. Aloha, Dennis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, aloha, Mike. Boy, it's been years since I've been able to get on the phone here and talk to you. This expatriate from New York, now residing in Florida, survived working the pile at Ground Zero. Yes, I was a firefighter. I got rewarded by having 2 different kinds of cancer that I'm now in remission from, and COPD. Yeah. So as far as this virus goes, yeah, I'm a prime candidate. I got to be real careful here. I'm down around the Clearwater, Newport Richey area now, and I heard Justin talking about how they, what kind of safeguards would they take into the, New York. I just want to set the timeline straight on the spring break. The first week of spring break before Easter was usually all the people from the Midwest come down. And they had just gotten started, and they made the announcement that, no, we're shutting everything down, and you guys better turn around and go back. The second week was usually when the New Yorkers come down. I just wanted to make that clear. But thank God. But they're still coming down. And as far as I'm checking people on Interstate 4 coming in from Louisiana, and 95, it kind of backfired when they had that giant traffic jam going up 95. But they're not really enforcing anything. What they're doing is they're just taking down names and where are you going, et cetera, et cetera. They don't have the manpower, the state police, to double check on where these people are actually going, if they are staying in a 14-day quarantine. And I know a couple that actually, friends of my sister who lives down further south of here, that actually went back to New York. I don't know why. Everybody's shaking their head. Why would you want to go back there with such a toxic environment up there? It's a lot safer down here. But they're really, this checking with the border, no, they're not really. I can't see them having enough cops around to double check on everybody. They can't even keep track of the people with the green cards, the illegal, the aliens that come in here, whether they extended their stay or not. How are they going to check all the people that are coming down here? I just don't see it happening, you know?
Well, I think for the most part, all they're doing is handing out flyers saying you need to quarantine yourself for 2 weeks. But for a lot of the spring breakers, 2 weeks is all the time they've got to. They're going to go out and party.
Yeah, well, you know, when you're young, you're invincible. You know, I remember those days. You know,
when I was young,
you're going to live forever.
Now I'm old and I'm very invincible.
I know. I've been there, and I'm lucky I'm alive today. I don't know why the big guy in the sky has kept me around, but I guess he wants me to learn a couple more things. But I know most of us that are down here are we are practicing as much as we can the stay-at-home thing, except when we really have to go out. What really was rotten was St. Patrick's Day. I was looking forward to it. And they just came out that morning and announced that all of the bars would be closed down at 5 p.m. that day. Well, there was a couple of places that were really packed, and the loophole that they had was that if you were a restaurant, you could stay open past the 5 p.m. thing. And then you had a choice. You had to serve 55% food and 45% drink, and my expression was, well, you can cook the food, or you can cook the books, which is it going to be? Anyway, Mike, it's good to hear you on the air again. God bless you and Claire, and hope you guys are doing well in your new surroundings. I'm in new surroundings myself now these days, and let's hope that we all get through this and everybody just be sensible about it. Thanks, Mike.
All right, I agree with you, and I'm glad that you're in remission from your cancer. And again, all that first responder. They really abused you guys. All right, so we're going to take another break for commercials. We have more callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Francis in North Carolina. Aloha, Francis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, kiddo. Oh, gosh, what is it on my mind? One, you know how they have the thing about that you have to be indoors by a certain time or whatever have you, and not be out and about as a self-imposed soft martial law crap and so forth. You know what? I just realized another reason why I'm staying home. You know why that is? Because whenever you go to the store, you did what?
I said enlighten us.
Well, that way you can avoid going to the store and stop being treated like cattle that's been inflicted with a plague. By that, I mean you go to the store, and you're not treated as a human being. You're standing in line, and all of a sudden you have a cashier yell at you saying, "Stand behind that line," you know, like as if you're in a Gestapo or something, and it's actually a store. And so you're like, "Excuse me, do what?" And so, unfortunately, I make my purchase, and thinking about the whole bloody attitude, the instigation of, "Oh, you must be carrying a plague with you or something," and decided to get back in the line after everything was done, and I returned the merchandise, and I told them, I said, "I'd rather go to a store where I'm treated as a person, not as a plague."
Yes.
And I walked out. I was so PO'd, it wasn't even silly. Because, quite frankly, when they go to also the point of when you bring in a shopping cart to do your shopping, and they say, "Well, can we wipe your handlebar down?" I said, "You spray anything on this handlebar, and I get sick, you're getting sued." So, and then they turn around and want to spray your shopping cart handle after you've shopped as though you had a plague to start with. It's like, this is really getting to be hypocritical in so many ways. It's not even silly. It makes me want to hurl. So that it would tend to explain, and this is in Rocky Mount, North Carolina that I'm talking about. And so I can see why there are a lot of businesses that are virtually no business at all, or only allow a certain number of people to come in. At least in one place called Hobby Lobby, dare I say, that allows in 10 people at a time as far as the shopping goes. And on top of that, unfortunately, we're only allowed by a loudspeaker in the store that for folks to come in the shop, the current attendees in the store are only allowed 30 minutes to get their shopping done. And I'm thinking, okie dokie, we're going too far within I can comprehend why the various corporations of these businesses are thinking about, well, we want to make sure we're safe for our workers and safe for our clients. I'm like, but you can take your so-called policies, which is political, i.e. political, and shove them. I mean, come on. Whenever I see someone wearing a mask or gloves or whatever, I'm thinking, well, my goodness, you must be compromised as far as your health goes. So,
Okay, I think that was the end of the call. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break for station identification. We will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before we take our next call, yes, I am aware that the YouTube feed is down today. I'm getting emails about that. And apparently YouTube changed their interface yet again. So we're having to rewrite our code to be able to connect to that and get that all set up, and hopefully it'll be back working properly tomorrow. All right, let's go to the phones here to Mike in Kentucky. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, I'm watching this for, I don't know, most of the last 5 or 6 days since about last Thursday. I'm watching this interactive coronavirus live map that's put out by The Independent on a service called Data Wrapper.
Yes.
And last week, it was announced that we had surpassed China's number of cases, which just seems to be holding around 82,000. But they have on this map 75,000 some odd, almost 76,000 recovered. But the chart that they have for the U.S. has jumped up over the weekend for doubled, basically, from 86,000 to 174, almost 175,000 cases. But
yes,
I think last week it had more recovered. It only shows 6 recovered and 3,416 deaths. Now, Spain is the one that seems to be leading as far as the mortality rate with whatever their population is. They've got confirmed cases of 95,000. The deaths are 8,189. I'd heard that there was a skating rink being used as a makeshift morgue to keep the bodies cool. I don't know. That sounds like quite sensationalized, but I've also been looking at, as you mentioned earlier, sort of without getting into the details, the good news, I think, from this is that the peak is going to be quite a bit earlier than they thought in England, and that will probably be true here in the U.S. because the multiplication rate of this virus is some order of magnitude quicker, so that half of the entire population of the British Isles, or at least the United Kingdom, was infected by mid-January before they had tested for their first positive case. So that points toward that, at least in that population, whatever the risk factors are, there should have been a lot more people dead from this by the end of January. And so the Ferguson et al. Guy, that the committee or whatever that recommended all these isolation, social distancing and factors, it looks like that he was, really off on how long this was going to last, and then half of the people that are going to die from it would have died from something else, and it's only going to be about 20,000 in Britain instead of 510,000. I think a lot of people missed that last week. Dale Bigtree tried to cover it. A lot of the alternative media tried to cover it, but the optimistic thing about all that is that this is not killing as many people as thought, and I think the reason the cases jumped up in the U.S. is because they're doing a lot more testing. But you're going to have travel papers to get anywhere that says that you've tested for it already. Is what I see coming. To get from Louisiana to Texas right now, you have to go through a hard checkpoint and agree to a 14-day self-quarantine. I guess have you covered this stuff?
Well, we've covered some of it. Yeah, okay. But they can't actually enforce that. They don't have the manpower to do it.
Well, so yeah, they don't. That's true.
I agree to a 14-day quarantine, drive on through the border, and just go on about doing whatever you wanted to do.
They're making you sign a piece of paper, and I guess if they catch you, there's a potential for some fines, $500 or $1,200, or some, different places have a different amount of fine, and maybe even 2 weeks in jail or something. I don't know. There's threats of that, but whether, like you say, at the same time they're letting people out of jail. Yeah. So I think maybe we'll hit the peak of this a little early. Poor old Trump wanting us to be relaxing things by Easter. It ain't going to happen. But
no.
What hoax or not, it looks like a lot less people. What I'm reading about now is the cytokine storms. And the risk factors in the United States probably are people are running around inflamed from so much fructose, lack of vitamin D3, and they don't realize that they're immunocompromised until something happens to them like this. And so they're trying to figure out ways to treat the cytokine storm issues there for hypersensitive immune systems that causes the organ damage and all the cascading effects that in vulnerable people will take them down. And
well, that's
I think that
chloroquine does is it tamps down that cytokine storm. I think it's cytokine.
All right, well, I'll let you go, man.
All right,
thanks for taking my call.
All right, we're going to switch over to Emrich in Vancouver. Aloha, Emrich. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Listen, I just got a question. Like I follow the world meters info and the statistics and whatnot, but I wonder how many homeless people, that live in shelters, like in Canada here, we've got homeless shelters. So they definitely don't separate, right? They live in the same place, so they got a contact with other people. Their immune system's got to be down. They're drug addicts. How many are getting sick, and how many are dying? You would think it would be rampant in that environment.
It may
with those people,
but nobody's testing the homeless
people. I don't know.
Nobody's testing the homeless people. They may just assume
that's fine, but wouldn't they be dying?
Some of them probably have, and they're probably saying they died of the flu.
I don't know. It's very interesting to me because I think that would be a weak link in the chain here, because the immune system's got to be damaged, right, from all the drugs and probably not eating proper and just living the good life, and then they're socializing. I see them all the time here. They haven't changed, and they're still around. So why aren't they getting sick? Why aren't they, passing away?
They're not getting sick.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't see any statistics. So I was wondering if somebody's got some kind of statistics on that.
Well, if somebody does, I hope they call into the show here. But, the homeless kind of fallen out the trapdoor at the bottom of our society. And, I have no idea what happens to them when they die. Presumably they're dying, the same way that us, everybody else is, one to a customer.
Yeah, well, somebody's got to know how many are dying. The bodies have to be taken care of somehow, somewhere, and somebody knows. So, but it should be. I would think it would be in high numbers, and if it isn't in high numbers, why is that? That's a question. It's just a question that I have.
Well, it's a valid question here, and the issue here is, first of all, not every homeless person is a drug user, and it may well be
No.
it may well be that being out in the wild like that is actually improving their immune system rather than running it down.
Well, it could be. I don't know. I know that in what was it, 1918, they found that the patients that they had out in the outside hospitals and they put them out in the sun did better than the patients in the hospitals.
Yeah, because of the vitamin D.
Being outside, even this, us being stuck in the houses and not being able to go outside if it's sunny or whatnot, that's not healthy. I mean, you don't want to socialize. You got to keep your distance. But being out in the sun is healthier than you laying on a couch and going for a walk. It's actually better for your system than laying on a couch.
Yes.
Well, there's always exceptions. Of course there is. But generally, that if I go for a walk, I feel better. I'm less depressed. It's all around better being outdoors. So anyways, you could be right. Maybe because they're outside all the time, maybe their immune system is stronger. So, and if that's the case, then we should encourage people to go outside. Don't socialize. Get your sun.
Absolutely.
So anyways, it's a question. Don't have the answer, but maybe some of your listeners know more. So, okay, well, thank you. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you for the phone call. The phone lines are empty, and getting on back to the economic news here. Remember when quantitative easing first started up, was right after TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, and it was an emergency measure. And I said, it may be called an emergency measure, but they're going down a path to where it's going to become permanent policy. Well, it looks like that's happening because the Federal Reserve has unveiled an open-ended QE, including corporate bonds. And going into just yesterday, the Fed had a problem. It had already used up half of its entire emergency fund of $700 billion. So they're now in QE5. It looks like that's just going to be open-ended. It's just going to keep throwing money at the stock and bond market to keep them propped up. Didn't really work today. The Dow closed about 400 down. And, the futures were down before the open. At the open, it went up, and everybody said, huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. And then it fell off the top of the peak and ended 400 down. All righty, the United States and Saudi Arabia are discussing the idea of setting up an oil accord. This is coming from Bloomberg, quoting Energy Secretary Dan Brouillette. Such an agreement would effectively amount to a cartel, which by definition is a group of independent market participants agreeing to act together to influence the market in a way favorable to them. So they're talking about maybe setting up a counter to OPEC. Okay. All righty. How the rich stay rich. Jeff Bezos and other top executives offloaded shares just in time before the pandemic slashed company values, saving them billions. So did a lot of members of Congress, and apparently there's now an actual investigation into some of them, whether they were engaging in insider trading based on information that they had that they're not supposed to make stock trades on. All right, the third bull run for precious metals is here as physical demand soars, and people want that gold. They want that silver. They want that platinum and palladium and rhodium and tantalum, all these strategic materials. They're all commoditized, and they're all tremendous stores of wealth, and demand is high, but unfortunately prices are low, and when prices are low, the dealers don't want to sell. So, selling like toilet paper. If you haven't bought physical gold yet, it's probably too late. Well, according to some of the callers we had into the show, yeah, it is. The dealers are hanging on to it here. Goldman Sachs gives their CEO a 20% raise as it forecasts a crash for America. Junk bond spreads and BBB bond spreads blow out past Lehman bankruptcy levels. We all remember Lehman Brothers. U.S. senators dumped stocks with COVID-19 inside information. Following a closed-door briefing on the threat of spreading COVID-19 infections before markets began crashing, at least 5 U.S. senators cashed in based on inside information unavailable to the public. The quintet includes Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Richard Byrd, James Inhofe, Kelly Loeffler, Ron Johnson, and Dianne Feinstein. Most likely other insiders in Washington and elsewhere sold equity holdings before public information about spreading COVID-19 infections caused financial, commodity, and other market turmoil. Now, Loeffler's husband is chairman and CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, both co-owners of stocks they dumped reportedly up to $3.1 million in late January and early February. Reportedly with a net worth of around $500 million, Loeffler is the wealthiest U.S. senator, a body known as the Millionaires Club. Over at the Federal Reserve, again, we mentioned this earlier in the show, unemployment may soar to 30%, GDP crash to 50% in the second quarter. Not a good time. Okay. Now, we've been hearing a lot of talk about pushing for the cashless society because those paper notes, they carry germs, they carry viruses, and I say that's nonsense. Germs can't live on the money I make. But you know, there's an easy solution, and both Canada and Australia have already gone that way. Their money's made out of plastic, polymer, little flexible like Mylar, and you can wash it. You can disinfect it. It's not a problem. Everybody was laughing at these polymer notes in Canada and Australia. Well, they're not laughing anymore here. But everybody wants you to use your cards. Use your plastic cards, and the banks get a piece of the action here. Those cards carry more types of bacteria than coins and cash. One person has a card, that person has COVID-19, they shove it into that little reading slot, and they leave virus all over the inside. You show up next in line, you shove your card in that same slot, your card comes out with the virus, you get it on your fingers, putting the card back in your wallet, then you touch your face or your eyes, and you're in trouble. So the cashless society is not an automatic fix to this. All right, we're going to take a phone call now from W in Texas. Aloha, W. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike. I was just thinking about something that God just called. He was talking about vitamin D and people being outdoors.
Yes.
And as soon as he did that, I looked up something. I remember hearing about for indoor areas where they try to pipe in solar energy to get sunlight inside of an enclosed area. I never really looked it up before. I looked it up, and it looked pretty interesting. So I just thought it was kind of interesting, you know, how to get pipe sunlight into enclosed areas and how that's maybe something for the future more buildings can have. I thought it was pretty neat. And so that was it. But I guess the follow-up comment was the whole hydroxy chloroquine. I guess the FDA finally approved it, and now I guess they're trying to get vitamin. Yeah, and now they're trying to get intravenous vitamin C in some of these hospitals as well. And the same thing is kind of happening. People are being censored off of social media for talking about these. I mean, treatments. It's just simple treatments, and folks are being blocked and stuff. It's really weird what's happening. So those are my two comments.
Well, with regard to your first comment, I've seen some of those solar piping systems, and they're very cool. The question is, are they bringing in all of the different bands of radiation coming from the sun? Because if I recall correctly, it's the ultraviolet that allows the generation of vitamin D. And if the glass or plastic elements of this light pipe block that UV, then you're getting illumination from the sun, but you're not getting all of the sun's rays. And so you need to be careful about that. As far as the second one is concerned, the hydroxychloroquine. The big thing right now is that the pharmaceutical corporations are in a race to come up with treatments and vaccines which cost money, and they don't want these simple cures to be out there. And no doubt,
they don't want the competition. Yeah.
They don't want the competition. They don't want inexpensive treatments out there so that people are forced to go and buy the expensive ones, the profitable ones.
That's it. Same story, different day. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. The phone lines are empty. And getting on back to the news here. Apparently, because of the coronavirus shutdown, there's been a mass slaughter of chickens in China. And these are chickens which are not going to be destined to the market. So we're looking at food shortages and soaring meat prices ahead. Now, Claire and I are very lucky. We're right in the middle of farming country, so we're at the head of the line. But for people in the urban environments, we're going to start seeing shortages. We're going to start seeing supply chain difficulty. Trucking companies are already out there saying they don't have enough drivers. And most trucking companies are mom and pop operations where they have a farm and they have a truck and they use the truck to deliver their produce to the local warehouses and markets here. On top of that, we've got this disease is wiping out China's pig population, and that's been around for several months now. Again, China is a huge pork consumer, but they're also a supplier of pork to the rest of the world. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Daniel in British Columbia. Aloha, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. I was wondering why no one's brought the subject of releasing or like getting rid of the sanctions on Iran, or at least lessening them, because they're hard hit by this COVID-19. And it's sort of like you don't hit a man when he's down. So I haven't heard anyone discuss this at all. And it just reminds me of when Leslie Stowe from CBS asked Madeleine Albright about the 500,000 potential dead children in Iraq. And she said, we don't see that as a problem. And, it just sickens me how,
yes.
It's like, why don't you just back off on them so they could at least get some relief. I just read on Drudge today, there's 15,000 dead in Iran. And I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but it's on Drudge report. So, I mean, if America's hit hard, they were hit particularly hard. And I find it funny, too, the conspiracy-minded person that I am, that there's 80 million Iranians and 23 members of parliament got it and died, and one general. And I just find that, like, the numbers just doesn't make sense to me. So,
isn't it funny?
I wondered what you thought about that.
Isn't it funny that the two nations that the United States considers threats, Iran and China, were the initial hotspots for this COVID-19?
Yeah, I do find that funny. I'm just bewildered by that. And like I said, the conspiracy-minded part of me thinks there's a few different strains of this, and one's maybe is kind of a red herring, and it's still deadly. Another one is highly weaponized and still registers as COVID-19. But that's just me, because I just find it funny that a large portion of the Iranian government is just almost wiped out, and who knows how much worse it could get. But
well, one report says there are 8 different mutated strains of COVID-19. Another report says there's as many as 40. And of course, that's the real wild card in all of this, because it could mutate to a form that, is extraordinarily lethal. And even though that form would certainly go extinct very quickly, it could still take a lot of people with it. I mean, over time, most pathogens evolve towards being less lethal because it doesn't do the pathogen any good to reproduce if they're killing the host before they have a chance to do so. That's why when measles first appeared, it was a horrendous killer. Now it's just a childhood annoyance.
Yeah, that's true. It needs a living, healthy host. But anyways, I'll leave you with that. I just find that funny, and I also find it funny that Israel was one of the first nations to completely lock itself down. Way before, right after China, I believe. But yes. I'm just a conspiracy theorist over here. All right, I'll leave you with that.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We're going to go with Tom in Florida. And Tom, I'm going to have to take you through this next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Good day to you, Michael. Aloha, everybody. Yeah, Michael, what's on my mind is, can you explain something to me about what I'm watching the videos in China or South Korea or even Italy? What are all these people in these suits spraying on all over the subways and all that? What is that? What are they spraying? Have bleach or something? What's coming out of those bottles that they're spraying?
Could be bleach. Could be hydrogen peroxide. Could be alcohol.
Okay, so that's what they're spraying to kill the virus off, correct?
Yes.
And I was wondering, I notice sometimes the government, it seems like they hit us with these chemtrails. They don't have no way they can have particle alcohol or bleach to shoot out of the planes to kill the virus off. I mean, I'm just thinking. Hey, by the way, Michael, you know what? I was listening earlier to a show, and so I had to check it out myself, and I couldn't believe what I saw. You remember the show Little House on the Prairie?
Yes.
With Doc Baker, and Michael Landon played, I forgot his part. And they lived in a place in Minnesota called Mankato or something.
Yes.
Well, did you know that the chloroquine has been around for 160 years?
Yes.
And if that thing's been around for 160 years, and it was killing, matter of fact, the whole episode was about a pandemic that was hitting Minnesota at the time. And Michael Landon has to quarantine, the whole village of Mankato has to be quarantined, and Doc Baker has to give out chloroquine to save the people. And that show was made back in the 80s. So what does that tell you? And I guess chloroquine, hold on.
Yeah, it's public domain. They can't patent it. That's why they don't want it out there as a medication. Stay on the line, Tom. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking with Tom in Florida. And I did a couple of flashback articles to the top of, or to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. One was from 2005, in which researchers had discovered hydroxychloroquine was effective against coronavirus. So they've known about that since 2005. And then we found another article from 2015 where they were talking about synthesizing new versions of coronavirus. So this stuff has been around for a while, and it does establish that, yes, people are taking these viruses from bats and playing around with them. So, Tom, what else do you have?
Yeah, Michael. Yesterday you had a caller in. You had a robot caller from out of the country, and he was saying something about there's something bigger coming maybe in the month of April. I think the month of April is going to be hang on, it's going to be a lot more wild than the month of March. I think there's maybe setting us up something bigger that's maybe coming down the pike. I think it's I don't know. Maybe this virus is real bad and all that, but I think there's something else maybe going to happen here. I don't know if it's a meteor hit or I'm being a little pessimistic, I guess, or maybe it's a major earthquake's going to erupt, or I don't know. I feel like there's something more to this than this Wuhan Chinese communist virus. I think there's something else coming down. I don't know what it is. I don't know. And so it don't smell right to me, Michael. It's a lot of weird stuff. And, it's funny, Fox News would fire Trish Regan and Kennedy Friday because they were, I guess they were trying to talk about the virus a little bit too much. And Laura Ingalls still on TV, but they got rid of those other two women. And I don't know, Michael, it seems like the whole thing is it's like ploy, what's going on here with this virus. Michael, I did a little research on tuberculosis. It was a lot worse than people think in 2020. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's come back. I mean, at one point it had been eradicated inside the United States, but it's come back. And guess who brought it to us?
I'm pretty sure I know who, Michael.
Yeah,
pretty sure I know who. And listen, there was over 9,000 cases in the United States in the southwestern part of the United States last year, west of the Mississippi. there was over 9,000 cases of tuberculosis. So, and that's just one disease. There's other diseases that are popping their ugly head back in this country we haven't seen in years. So I did a little research on that, and it's not a good thing. And
No.
as far as the month of April's coming up, tomorrow's April 1st, as we all know, and then and then I think that whole month is going to be a wild ride for a lot of people, because now here in Florida, they just on the eastern part of Florida, which is I'm very perplexed about right now. They just put out Steve will know about this, that they've closed down the eastern part of Florida now for the next 6 weeks, till May 15th. So I don't know. It's some strange times going on here.
Yes.
And not over a virus like this, and like I said, now the Chinese seem like they have it under control, supposedly. And Michael, did you ever do any research on the Hong Kong flu?
No. The answer is no.
The Hong Kong flu killed a lot of people too. It was a flu, but it was a pretty bad flu. That was a bad year for Hong Kong flu one year. I forgot what year it was, but that killed a lot of people. So this coronavirus is not nothing new. It's been around for a while.
Okay, but Tom, the coronavirus, the COVID-19 is not a flu. It is a viral pneumonia, and it specifically attacks the lungs. May also attack the nervous system as well. Apparently, some of the people who've recovered from COVID-19 are reporting that they've lost their sense of taste and smell.
Correct. What is tuberculosis considered, Michael?
A parasitic infection.
That's an infection. So the difference between a flu and a virus and an infection is all different categories, I suppose.
Well, it has to do with the first of all, exactly what form the pathogen takes, whether it's a bacteria, microscopic parasite, or a virus, because they all operate differently. Viruses are considered sort of in that gray area. They're not really alive, but they form new versions of themselves from materials they find around them inside cells. And by that definition, the very earliest life forms on Earth were viruses that built copies of themselves from the primordial soup.
So basically they're all airborne, correct?
Some survive in the air for a very long time, some do not. It has to do with the protein code.
Okay. I did know one thing, Michael, that I found out when the Earth was created, mainly, one of the main ingredients was ammonia. Is that correct?
Yes. And if you take ammonia and methane and you expose them to electricity like lightning bolts, they start to form the basic amino acids.
Correct. Right. That's right. You got an electrical charge, right? Well, I thought that was very interesting. But as far as what the Chinese and the Koreans and everybody else is, I guess the United States is doing is spraying. I don't know what they're spraying. I like to know what they're spraying. You say it's maybe peroxide or alcohol, but maybe who knows? It could be something else they're spraying to kill the virus off in these trains and buses, and who knows? I don't know what they're spraying actually, but something to actually find out. I know you can go to a store and buy a can of Lysol. It supposedly kills 99.9% of the bacteria and other, I guess, escapes, whatever, when you spray your house or whatever for bacteria. So that's kind of interesting about all that. But anyway, Michael, I'll let you go. That's all I got for today. I just think the month of April is going to be a wild ride, and I think there's something more to this. What the governments are telling us than this virus. I think there's going to be a hidden. They all may come out of the wash within the next 90 days. We'll see.
All right. Well, we'll see. Time will solve that mystery. And thanks for the phone call. And before we take our next phone call, a little bit of clarification for people who don't understand it. Viruses reproduce by invading a healthy cell in your body and hijacking the machinery of reproduction to make more viruses. A bacteria is capable of reproducing itself, but in so doing, it's using up your body's nutrients and energy, and in some cases it's also very destructive of the cells, but they operate in two completely different ways. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, I'm calling in response to the earlier caller, the gentleman who said he was conspiracy-minded about why we haven't lifted sanctions on Iran, how it hit their parliament so hard. Look, it's the same reason why there's unmarked F-18s flying over there. It's the same reason why we've been against Iran for the last 40 years, and it's Israel. That's why we're there. That's why we're in Syria. That's why we did Libya and made that into nothing. That's why we made all those millions of refugees that have destabilized Europe. That's why we did all of that. And who are the people who are making the money out of this? Well, Wall Street, the Federal Reserve, guess who? So that's no conspiracy theory about that at all. They're getting rich. We are not. So no conspiracy theory there whatsoever about that. It's interesting also that speaking of the horrible things about kicking a person when they're down, like we're doing with Iran and leaving sanctions on. How about what happened in Gaza when they confiscated Gazan hospitals? I'm sure you saw that.
Yes, I did.
The Israelis confiscated. They took it away. The Gazans are totally down, and the Israelis, they will kick anybody when they're down. That's what they will do to us. That's what they are doing to us. Phil Giraldi had a wonderful article. I sent it on to you. Ran at uns.com, and it talks about all this. And he would be a wonderful guest, by the way, Michael, as would Whitney Webb. But listen. They're going to own this country. They own it already. They own the networks. They own the government. They own it all. And they own the stock exchange now. They own the Federal Reserve and the banking system. And it's against the law to say anything about them. And by the way, Phil Giraldi had that article on how they're moving into state level, and they use Virginia as a test, as a model on how they're actually now official departments within taxpayer paid. Virginia taxpayers pay for this state department that does nothing but champion Israeli businesses over Virginia businesses in getting business. And that model's gone all over. There's 28 states where you can't criticize them. I got news for you. After this is all over and they own everything, you will be able to criticize them anywhere. It won't be 28 states. It'll be everywhere. But I just wanted to reply to that, and there's no conspiracy theory about that at all. That's exactly, all those laws are going on. That's happening in Virginia. It happened in taking the stuff in Gaza. The reason why we're there to begin with is in the Middle East and warring over there for 40 years is Israel. That's period. Anyways, that's my 2 cents, Mike. Sorry.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Ken in Massachusetts. Aloha, Ken. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. I don't know if you've covered this, but there was CBS, I believe it was on the 27th, they aired footage that they claimed to be of a hospital in New York City. They were covering the crisis in New York City, supposedly.
Yes.
And they recycled footage that was from Sky News Australia, and it was actually a hospital in Italy. It's, why would they do this? Was it laziness, etc.?
CBS is saying...
my take on it is, sorry?
CBS is saying it was an editing mistake, but I think they just looked for the most sensational looking footage they could. And this one from Sky News, the patients were wearing bubble helmets and all kinds of stuff like that.
It reminds me of, remember the thing with the shooting range in Louisville, and it was supposed to be the Turks attacking the Kurds?
Yes.
A couple of years back. Do you remember that? I think that was on, I believe it was ABC in that case. I'm thinking it's I'm kind of with you. I'm kind of agnostic and between the idea of it being a hoax and the end of the world kind of thing. But it does seem like the way that the corporate media is operating is they just have a pre-written script, and they're going to stick with it and choreograph what they need to, create the coverage there. And this is just a good example of it. I don't know if you covered this already, but
yeah, I did. We did cover that. And apparently they're having another coronavirus task force briefing on TV right now. At least Fox News is covering it. A lot of stations no longer are, because they're saying that the information being put out by the White House is inaccurate and we cannot factually verify.
I know. It's interesting. It makes me think of like back in the 30s, you had FDR, and they just let him go on and talk about whatever agenda it was that he wanted to have. It's preposterous. I mean, he's the president. They can talk about it after he's done talking and break it down and criticize it. But it's the excuses are saying they can't fact check him in real time. I mean, when was this ever an issue in the past? I don't get it.
It never was. It's just, it's
exactly.
Media. They're worried that Trump's getting a lot of airtime. He's looking presidential. He's acting presidential. His poll numbers are way up, and the Democrats are looking.
Yeah, he's very much looking like a statesman. Like him or not, Chris Palacios, he's really doing pretty well. So, anyway, yeah, I didn't know if you were aware of that particular situation, but thanks, and that's about all I got.
All right. Well, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are empty. 800-313-9443. We're coming up on the end of the program. Remember that story down in Texas? There was a woman who was arrested for voting, whose defense was that she was ineligible to vote. And after she was found guilty, her lawyers appealed, saying, look, she didn't know she was ineligible to vote, but the Texas court has upheld the sentence for her. So she's going to the Hooskow for a little while. All righty. Again, over in Texas, a disabled Texas woman shot and killed an intruder and fended off another during an attempted home invasion at her Houston apartment. Good for her. Little story that came on out of governmentslaves.news. When CNN tells you not to stockpile guns or ammo, you should stockpile guns and ammo. And I'll tell you right now, around here, there's shortages already. People are stocking up on that. All right, a little bit of news from the world of computers. The video calling app Zoom, that has seen a massive spike in usage during the shelter in place during coronavirus, is secretly sharing data with Facebook via its iOS app, even if users' accounts are not linked. You're the product. You and your data. You're the big product that all of these things are dealing in here. Apparently, Microsoft has released an emergency update to fix a Windows 10 bug that has been causing internet connectivity issues for users and preventing some Office 365 setups from reaching the cloud. And I got to tell you, I'm not happy with the cloud right now that I've been forced onto it. The company confirmed the internet connectivity bug on Thursday, which affected PCs and servers running all supported versions of Windows 10 devices that are using a proxy, especially with a virtual private network. Over in Ohio, kids abused, we got to take a break for our last commercial break, and we'll be back with the final segment of our program after these few words. America, welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. Over in Dayton, Ohio, child welfare officials placed children in the home of not one, but two sexual abuse suspects who are currently under police investigation, and not surprisingly, the children later reported they were abused. Well done, bureaucrats. We're proud of you here. All right, getting finally into the coronavirus news. The Pentagon confirms over 1,000 COVID-19 cases among the military, has ordered military bases to stop publicly reporting. So you think about that for a while. In other words, they're admitting, they're hiding some of the numbers from us in our military. Okay, story that is coming out of Bethesda.com. The true number of British coronavirus deaths could be over 20% more than the official figures. The government reveals 40 more people had died outside hospitals up to March 20th compared with the official death toll of 170. In other words, if you die of it outside the hospital, you're not being counted. Another story, this one coming from the organicprepper.com. It's only a matter of time until COVID-19 lockdowns lead to civil unrest and violent crime. And what they're talking about, of course, is what will happen if and when the food supply chain collapses totally. And it's already under strain. And if you thought the fistfights over toilet paper were bad, wait till it's fistfights over pure drinking water or meat or vegetables or whatever. And it could go there. And I think that's the reason they've activated all these military personnel to have on standby to deal with the possibility of civil unrest if this goes much further. Mike Adams is out there saying, prepare for war. Trump activates 1 million reservists and the IRR to active duty as nation prepares for mass combat casualties. Mike Adams is a little sensationalistic, but on the other hand, you can't rule this out. Now, apparently, Donald Trump trolled Rachel Maddow after she claimed he was lying about the USNS Comfort being sent to New York. And he basically trolled her with a video clip of her claiming a Navy hospital ship would not be arriving in New York to aid in the coronavirus fight. The clip featured a buzzer sound every time Maddow said something, which ultimately turned out to be false. The liberal MSNBC host told viewers on March 20th, 10 days ago, that the USNS Comfort would not be helping anywhere in the country for weeks. And of course, it's now in New York Harbor, just 10 days later. Basically, Rachel Maddow implied that Trump was lying. Wrong, Rachel. And as one of our callers just mentioned, Israeli forces demolished an emergency coronavirus clinic for the Palestinians. This happened last Thursday. They entered a Palestinian village in the northern Jordan Valley to confiscate all the materials designated to build a clinic to deal with COVID-19. Officials from the Israeli Civil Administration came to the village of Kirbet Ibzig with a military escort, a bulldozer, and 2 trucks equipped with cranes to demolish community clinic and emergency housing. All right, there's the music. It's time for me to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. I cannot stress how important it is right now. We need your help. We really do. That's all I can say about that. So we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.